All right, two very corrupt agencies, the FBI and the CIA. I'm not breaking news here, but they need to be swept completely clean, all right? Joining us now to talk about it, Kash Patel, former Deputy Director of National Intelligence and former Pentagon Chief of Staff. Kash, welcome. Appreciate it very much. We know that John Ratcliffe is going to the CIA. I think he's a pretty tough guy, and he knows where at least some of the bodies are buried. What do you think? What should he look for?
You know, Johnny's a personal friend. He was in Congress when we did Russiagate when I was a chief investigator, and then later when he was DNI, and I was the deputy director. He's a fantastic choice. He understands the intelligence community, but also, you got to remember, he was one of the stalwarts in Congress, who's a former federal prosecutor that stood up and said, look, my FBI and my DOJ that I used to run and work in lied to the American people, lied to a federal court, and illegally surveilled a president and thousands of Americans. And he took a lot of heat for it, but he was right.
He was right, absolutely. Now, we haven't heard FBI. Now, Matt Gaetz, Justice Department, that does oversee the FBI, but we need a strong FBI director.
Look, whether it's FBI, DOJ, DOD, I think the narrative and the mandate that President Trump received is simple. They want accountability inside of Washington, D.C. I'm not saying everyone in these institutions, far be it from everyone, has corrupted them. But the leadership structure, for example, at the Department of Defense, where I was chief of staff, these 4-star and 3-star generals, a lot of them are fantastic, Larry. But some of them, I don't understand what they're doing. They're there for their next promotion, and they're there to propagate DEI and white rage and climate change. But these are the same folks. When President Trump gets criticized for these appointments, why don't we ask the American public to say, hey, these are the folks that gave us the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal. These are the folks that drone struck 7 Afghani children in response to that and didn't take responsibility for that. These are the folks that failed the no-fail mission of the United States and are now leading us into multiple world wars. Of course it's time for a change, and that's what America voted for.
I mean, let's go back to that, this woke Pentagon, DEI Pentagon, et cetera. And Pete Hegseth wrote a brilliant book about that. He's a much decorated military veteran himself and a very smart fellow, as we all know. He's being criticized for this. I think he should be praised for this. I mean, this is a kind of sweep of the Pentagon that you have to have every few, I don't know, 30 years, 40. I mean, nothing, correct me if I'm wrong. George C. Marshall, great wartime leader, had a similar sweep with generals and top officers, redid the headquarters, redid the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I don't know. Have we done anything like this since then? I mean, that was a long time ago, like 75 years ago, some odd.
Well, Ike Eisenhower warned us about it 60 years ago. He said, the defense industrial complex, if you let it, will overtake not just the DOD, but all of Washington, D.C., and it has. And they do a lot of good work. But all of these folks that are in these leadership positions that have corrupted it are running a circular revolving door. Hire me into the DOD, then hire me into your 7-figure payday at this defense industrial contract. By the way, while I was serving as Secretary of Defense, let me make sure you get a $1 billion contract. This has to stop. This has to be broken apart. I mean, you're talking about a Defense Department, just one clear example, in the Ukraine conflict. They didn't lose $1 billion by wasting it. They lost $1 billion. They can't find it.
Right.
And this Department of Defense, and you're the economic guy, has not passed a budget audit in 16 years. Of course it's time for sweeping leadership.
What you mean hasn't passed a budget audit? This is interesting new info.
Yeah, so as Chief of Staff, I oversee the entire Department of Defense, and every year there's an annual financial audit that checks the balances and the books. And the Department of Defense has not passed an audit of its budget in over a decade.
Isn't that something? Now, what about the FBI? There was a great story a couple days ago. I think it was the Washington Times. FBI leaders shocked and stunned at Trump's victory. And then it goes on, it takes the next 20 or so paragraphs that they couldn't believe it happened, and they may have to hand in their resumes. Shocked and so, why would the FBI be so political? That's not their mission. Well, the answer is maybe they're all liberal Democrats over there, and maybe that's part of it, or that they are the ones who were in charge of weaponization. I mean, here, Melania Trump really refused to talk to Jill Biden afterwards because Melania was still furious at the FBI invasion of Mar-a-Lago, down the road from here. What business did they have? What business did the FBI have inviting CNN at 5 a.m. in the morning to bust up Roger Stone's house down in Fort Lauderdale, or wherever Roger was living, when all they had to do was contact the lawyer? The answer is left-wing politics.
No, look, as a former national security prosecutor at the Department of Justice, where I worked with FBI agents all across the country and around the world, the question, again, we should be asking those folks that are quote-unquote outraged, where was your career official outrage when Russiagate occurred and you illegally surveilled a president? Where was your career outrage when hundreds of thousands of Americans were unlawfully surveilled in 1 year alone, just 2 years ago? Where was your outrage when houses of worship were raided, or where our children go to school, the FBI was posting up outside? So I didn't see or hear any of that outrage then, but it goes to your point. It shows their political proclivities. And the worst weapon we have in government is a two-tier system of justice that's been weaponized. So I think some of these folks are finally showing us their hypocrisy. And I think it's time that Donald Trump came in there with the sweeping mandate that the American public gave him to return a singular system of constitutional justice. Here's the thing. There is no revenge list. If Donald Trump is successful, he will make these institutions, the FBI, DOJ, DOD, et cetera, successful forever.
Do what they are supposed to do, which is to say, I would say, mete out the law fairly in a neutral fashion with the Constitution. What's the name of the book?
Government Gangsters.
All right, I wanted to get that in. Kash Patel, thank you very much.